Every year we see a whole bunch of new concepts and new products. There's at least a dozen every January that come out. Some celebrity, some trainer, some doctor has a perfect new solution. It's going to cure obesity for everybody. No effort, no work. What we know is 93% or more of these fail within the first 6 months. You'll probably lose some weight. You can lose weight doing anything. You know, masking tape will work great. You know? There's all sorts of ways to lose weight. The issue is keeping it off. The standard in the science world for being successful with weight loss is where are you at in 12 months? 93% of them fail after 6 months, and most people have regained the weight. They're tired of that gimmick, and they've regained the weight. Even worse yet, over 40% of the people who lose weight regain more weight than what they had in the first place. And that's because they lost the wrong weight. They're trying to starve off this weight, and what they're doing is they're losing the wrong weight. They're losing lean tissue. They're not losing the fat they need to lose. They're losing mostly lean tissue, like their skeletal muscle, the things that actually burn calories. And the more of those lean tissues you lose, the less likely you'll continue losing, and certainly the less likely you are to keep it off. It's not about just losing weight. It's about losing the right weight and protecting your lean tissues. And that's what we do differently. Just last week, I got an email from a colleague of mine, Stacy Schmidt. She's executive director of the Obesity Treatment Foundation. This is a national foundation in Denver, Colorado, that all of the doctors who are experts in obesity, they're called bariatric physicians, work at. Anyway, she's giving a keynote address in a couple of weeks. She called and asked me if she could quote me. And she sent me this email, and she said, I want to quote you about this. It said, the obesity treatment currently is viewed as a negative issue. It's about losing fat, it's about losing weight, and basically it's focused on what you ought to not do. It's a negative concept of what to avoid. So what you do that's totally different is you change it to a positive concept. You focus on protein. It's a positive issue of protecting your tissues, and it's what to do. It's a positive approach to life. You turn your tissues into metabolically active tissues, and you eliminate fat naturally. The National Center, the obesity group, called me to quote me to how they ought to do it. Darcy mentioned our systems. Justin mentioned them last night as pillars. These are our 4 systems. We're not a catalog company. We're never going to have 400 products. We're not going to introduce 10 new products every other month. The reason companies do that is because they know you didn't like the last 10. Okay? And they think they'll keep you interested by introducing more. If you have the right systems that are going to build the foundation for health, if you have the right vehicle, if you have the right partner, you don't need to trade it out, right? You know, it's all about having the right system. So our systems, metabolic, core, prime, skinship. These are our systems, and we build around that. All of our products fit into these kinds of systems. I'm going to go through and talk a little science about each of these. Darcy didn't cover quite all this morning. But I'm going to talk wade into a little science, because that's what I do, right? So let's start out with skinship for a few comments. Skinship is our newest system, which really helps round out our package. When we look at the body and the health of our body, one of the major organs of our body is actually the skin. We're surrounded by this protective organ that protects us from the environment. We think about it usually for appearance. It's what we look at. But in reality, it's one of our most important organs because it protects us from the environment around us. Whether it's the sun, or whether it's environmental pollution, whether it's bacteria or viruses, our skin is our first line of defense. Having healthy skin will make you look better, but it also will make you healthier. As we look at the skin as an organ, it basically is very complex. Again, we think about the outer surface, that sort of dermis layer, and that's what we see. But as you get underneath it, it's very complex. It has this maze of capillaries and nerves. It has muscle layers. It has connective tissue, it has fat, it just has all sorts of a complex organ. It's actually one of our most energy expensive tissues in the body. Constantly turning over, constantly has to be repaired. A year ago, we got the opportunity to team up with one of the leading experts in skincare, Dr. Ruthie Harper. And she has made some amazing discoveries that you've already heard some about. It's a DNA approach, genetic-based, to health and skincare. Totally unique approach by using your individual DNA to give you an individual approach to your healthcare. This is where healthcare is going to go. We have sort of a one-size-fits-all approach, nutrition guidelines and things like that. The next step is we know we're all individuals. We have different lifestyles. We have different genetic backgrounds. Now we have the ability to have individual serums, individual supplements that relate to you as a person, specifically your genetic background and your DNA. This is a first step in individualized healthcare. This is a real breakthrough. It's an amazing thing that we were able to bring in Dr. Harper, and I'm certainly excited about having her join our scientific advisory board. It's going to be a great addition. Great step forward. The other thing I want to do today is talk about the other three products, the other three systems. And one of the things I want to do a little different is talk about some of the science of how they fit together. Many of you have heard me speak in the past, maybe too many times, but I always talk about the integration of our products and that there's so many layers. Sometimes we talk kind of superficially about what they do. We'll talk about metabolic and core and prime. Everybody knows that metabolic has to do with your muscle health. It helps your muscles burn fat, sort of the top layer. We talk about the core system, and it has the probiotic. We won't have time to talk about that today, but it has the essentials, which are adaptogens, which help correct your metabolism. You heard some great testimonials. And we have our newer system, the prime, which you know as a nitric oxide activator and helps with circulation. Those are sort of the big view. Those are the 10,000-foot view. Let's go down another level and think about how they actually work together and integrate. A lot of the times you hear me talk about metabolic correction. We're talking about forming this foundation for good health, and it's really a foundation for the right metabolism. So this is a schematic, a cartoon of sort of simplifying the cell. And what I want to talk about is really energy metabolism. So the top, what we have is a blood vessel there, bloodstream. And going through that bloodstream, we have all of the fuels. We have our oxygen. We have our fuels, the carbohydrate, the blood glucose, blood sugar, you might know it as. We have fat. So that together with our oxygen, those are the fuels that are coming into the body. Those go into the body, and the little peanut thing there is an organelle that we call the mitochondria. That's kind of like a little furnace. That's our engine inside of every cell. And that's how we convert the food energy, food, carbohydrates, and fat, into the energy we're actually going to use in the cell. And that energy in the cell is called ATP. That's kind of the gasoline for our body. That's a really critical thing. I'm going to talk about that. This is the science we're going to get into, right? So this is called ATP. So this balance of fuels between glucose and fat is a critical thing that we're going to be adjusting. Okay, so this balance is the important thing. How does the body make selections, fat and glucose? How do we make this ATP, and how do we keep it stable? One of the things that we all think about is exercise. Exercise obviously is good for us. It helps keep our muscle healthy. It helps keep our cardiovascular system, and it helps burn energy. Everybody talks about using exercise for weight loss. It turns out that it takes an awful lot of exercise to get weight loss. If you just go out, most of the evidence suggests that to really lose weight with exercise, you have to put in more than 90 minutes of fairly intense exercise per day. It takes a lot. Let me tell you why. If you look at the balance of fuels that go with exercise, it burns a lot of calories, for sure. But if you look at the balance of fuel, it's about 60%. And this is fairly intense exercise. This is like running. So something that raises your heart rate above 100, 120 beats per minute. The fuel mix is about 60-40 carbohydrates to fat. You're burning fat, but you're burning mostly carbohydrates. The exact mixture varies depending on how hard you're working. The more intense the exercise, the more carbs you're actually burning. Trainers get real confused about this. Most of them don't have a clue, actually. But anyway, you burn the carbohydrates, and the less trained you are, the more you burn. So if you're a weekend warrior and you sit behind your computer all day, 5, 6, 7 days a week, and you think about exercising, but then you go out on Saturday and you run your 5 miles or something, you realize you're not getting much out of it. You're helping your heart, you're helping your circulation, you're helping your muscles, but you're not really losing any weight. It's because 80% of what you burned was carbohydrates. And what we know is when the fuel is primarily carbohydrate, it triggers you to be hungry and you eat it to make up for it. The problem that most people don't lose weight with exercising is their body tells them they have to eat to make up the difference. And so you replace it. So exercise is great for your overall composition and your health, but it's really hard to lose weight because your body's telling you you need to eat more. You're hungry. What's really unique about metabolic is that it triggers protein synthesis and metabolism in the muscle, and it burns calories, and it doesn't trigger hunger. It shifts the fuel mix to about 70% coming from fat. We're minimizing our need for carbohydrates. We're shifting it to fat, and that's why we tell you should measure inches and not just weight. We're protecting the muscles. We're building muscle mass. I got an email from Tom Zetta last week about an individual up in Canada, and he was talking about an individual. It talked about his blood pressure changing, he was diabetic and his glucose going down and all of those things. But he said that over the last, and I forget how long it was, 2-3 months, he'd only lost 10 pounds, but he was fortunate enough to have his body composition change, and he went from 30% fat to 19% fat in those 3 months. And that's the uniqueness of metabolic. It naturally burns away the fat. It's what Stacy Schmidt said. It naturally and positively burns away the fat. So let's talk about the metabolic. I probably get more questions about the shakes than anything else, and probably for good reason. They're actually very complex. I tell you they're not magic because they're based on pure science. I know exactly what they do, but the depth of how they're put together is actually amazing, and there's simply nothing like that. So this is a picture of taking a shake for breakfast, or whatever meal you want, taking a shake times 0, and looking at protein synthesis, this process of building new proteins in the body, in your muscles. And the process goes over a period of time, and when it goes up, it peaks, and sort of as you absorb the meal, then it comes back down. It's this period, this blue period is when you're burning your calories. Okay? Goes up. It lasts about 2 to 3 hours. That's when you're burning the calories. One of the questions I tend to get is I'll have people come up to me and say, love your products. They taste great. I've been taking them now for 3 months, but I'm just not losing much weight. Interesting. First question I always ask is, when you're taking them, breakfast, what are you doing for the rest of the day? Oh, I'm eating my normal things. And, what do you mean you're eating your normal thing? I go out and I have a deli sandwich, and I said, the reason it's not working is you're not following the metabolic pattern. Not only do you have to have the shake for breakfast or lunch or both, but you have to follow the metabolic pattern in each meal. This balance of carbohydrate, protein, and fat created by the shake, if you don't observe that at each meal, you're not going to get the benefits. It's a lifestyle. That's why the book's called The Metabolic Lifestyle. So you have to have the balance at breakfast, but you have to follow through at lunch and dinner. We call it the plate look, that balance of protein to carbohydrate, that 30 grams of protein and that relationship 1-to-1 with carbohydrate and protein. One of the New Year's resolutions, actually I don't do resolutions, one of the things we're going to do in the new year is we're going to get a little more focused on training. So we're going to start producing more things about training about the product. So I think that's going to be one of the things I'm excited about. So anyway, we have this period of burn. Probably the second most question I get is, I really love your product. Are you ever going to make one without all the sugars in it? I got this question 3 times last night at the reception. The metabolic shake is what we might call a macro meal. If you go out and talk to your trainers, they'll talk about macros. What they're talking about is this balance of macronutrients, the protein, carbohydrates, and fat, the things that provide energy. And what's the balance of that? What's different about the metabolic shake is it's not a protein shake. Don't ever let anybody compare it to a protein thing. If you want a protein shake, go down to Costco and buy something cheap, okay? That's what you want. Go get that. Okay? What we have is a metabolic shake, and it's a perfect blend of a balance of protein and amino acids, exact blend of carbohydrates, an exact blend of fats. Let's talk about those carbohydrates. The metabolic shake has about 20 grams of carbohydrates, 4 of which are fiber. So they don't count as calories. Basically, they're part of the satiety. They're part of what makes you feel full. So they're strategically placed there to give it sort of texture and also fullness. There are 13 grams of sugars in it. People say, well, what do you do with all those sugars? My question to them is, if somebody goes out and drinks a protein shake, what else do you eat? What else do you eat during the day that has no carbohydrates in it? Is all you eat all day long is protein? Everybody goes out and eats some carbohydrates. What we have done is strategically planned the carbohydrates. Our sugars are a mixture of lactose that comes from the dairy that's in the shakes, fructose, and sucrose, organic sugar cane. And we have specifically selected those in those proportions because they give us the exact fuel we want, fuel mixtures. They give us the exact fuel we want to replace the carbohydrates you're burning, and they give us the exact insulin response. It's why it works so well with diabetics. We get the exact insulin response, which is, one, it's important to being able to build protein. You have to have some insulin there that's in the right balance. And the other is by keeping insulin low, we avoid fat storage. If you have too much insulin, if you go out and have your Pop-Tart or your Dunkin' Donut for breakfast, you're into fat storage for the day and you're stuck. There's no way you're going to lose weight. If you start your day with a bowl of cereal, I guarantee you're going to have trouble losing weight because you now have elevated your insulin for the day and your body is thinking storage for the rest of the day. By having the shake, we control it. So our carbohydrates are strategically placed in ways that most people have no clue of what we've done. Okay, they just simply don't get it. So the next time somebody says, no, you can't tell them they're stupid, but the next time somebody asks you about it, you need to tell them it's a complete meal replacement exactly designed for the metabolically outcome we want. And what the devil are you eating if you don't eat that? The other one part of it is the fats, and you look on the label and it says it's a saturated fat, and that's just part of the way the USDA labels things. When we think about saturated fats, that might be a problem for us. The problem is the long-chain saturated fats. Ours are medium-chain triglycerides, which are very short-chain. Have an absolutely unique effect. They have no effect on blood lipids. They won't change your blood lipids negatively at all. They actually tend to lower them. When they come into the body, they go directly to the liver, and they have to be burned. And when they burn, they increase fat burning. So the fats we have actually accelerate fat burning. And on top of that, when you burn them, they produce ketones, which also helps you with keeping your appetite down. So every part of the metabolic shake is totally scientifically and strategically placed. And people who ask the question just simply aren't smart enough to get it. The third question that I always get is, why don't I just go buy whey protein? Again, it's a full meal replacement. If you go buy whey protein, what else are you going to eat? If you eat it with your bowl of cereal in the morning, I guarantee you're going to waste the protein. You're not going to get much benefit. Unless you're an elite marathon runner who needs 500 grams of carbohydrate per day, if you're trying to lose weight, you're not going to do it. Okay? So let's think about those proteins. The metabolic shake, again, is in blue. There's that curve that I showed you before. It lasts about 2.5 hours or something like that. I just want to show you some pure proteins against that. So in red, we've got the whey protein. So I'm going to go out and I'm just going to buy pure whey protein and use it as a shake. And what you can see is the curve sort of similar, comes up about the same, peaks about the same, but it falls off a lot quicker. What metabolic does, because it's a full meal replacement, it has fiber, it has fat, it has a blend of proteins to it, what we get is a much longer burn period. So there's nothing wrong with whey, it's just not complete. What else are you going to do? Are you smart enough to put together the macronutrients the way we've done it? Most people can't do that. And then I'll compare it to soy. Soy, on the other hand, is not as good. And if you compare it just to the whey curve there, what you see is if you use 30 grams of whey or 30 grams of soy, soy has a lower peak and also a lower duration. It's not that soy's bad, it's just that you need to use 30 or 40% more to be equal. It's lower quality. It's an inferior product. Okay? It's not bad, you can use it, but you have to use more of it to be equal. So those are sort of the issues of the protein comparison. Let's move on to one more, to the Recharge. Recharge is one of my favorite products. It's one that we just introduced a couple of years ago. How do you like the blue eyes? This is one of the products I use every day. You know, I would never miss it. Hopefully it's not too confusing. It has 3 different uses, so let me just go through them real quickly. One is that, and this is the way I use it, I'm not trying to lose weight. I use it after exercise. I'm using it for muscle health. So right after exercise, when I exercise every day, I mix up a Recharge. I use it partial for rehydration, mixed in water, so it's a great source of fluid. But it also triggers muscle recovery. So it immediately triggers your muscle to start rebuilding and repairing. I have less soreness, and I get more benefit from my workout. So I use it every day after exercise. A second use for it is to add it to a meal that might be low in protein. A lot of times when I'm traveling, I'll be out and I decide, well, I think maybe I just have a salad for lunch. And, you know, most salads aren't going to have 30 grams of protein in it. What you can do is mix up a shake along with it, and it will basically turn it into a metabolic meal. It will make it act, because of the branched-chain amino acids, the leucines that are in it, it will make that meal act like it's got about 30 grams of protein. It's not quite as effective as the shake, but it'll probably give you 75%, even in a meal that's not really balanced very well. So I use it when I'm out, you know, I even know I have a couple of friends who just shoot it as a powder. I can't do that, but I do carry it around and mix it in water. The third use is the one I really want to sort of fit into today, and that's really our first one. That was for people during weight loss. People who are trying to lose weight can use the Recharge about 2 hours after the metabolic shake in the morning. It increases weight loss. So here's our curve again. This is a shake. And at about 2 hours afterwards, if you take the Recharge, what it does is it extends the length of the burn. That period that you're burning ATP, it actually extends it out to 3, maybe to 4 hours. So you'll get a 30% increase in energy burning. It's kind of cool. So I'm going to tell you. Actually, I don't spell metabolic very well, do I? Oh, well. I'm going to blame that on Ben, actually. It increases the burn period, so you're going to burn more ATP. And you think, well, it just increases the period of protein synthesis, so you burn more energy. It's actually more interesting than that. It's much more scientifically complex, and I'm going to sort of tie all these back together. So here's our picture of fuels again. Mixture of glucose and fat. And what Recharge does, besides stimulating protein synthesis, is it has a very specific effect on an enzyme known as AMPK. Recharge specifically, the combination of leucine and the B6 that's in it, specifically stimulates this enzyme called AMP kinase, AMP, which stimulates the mitochondria to burn more fat. And so when you combine metabolic with Recharge, you shift that fat burning even further over. So about an 80-20 mixture. You're burning even more fat and less carbohydrate. Amazing effect of helping you to change your body composition. This AMP kinase enzyme is really cool, and the effect of recharge on it is equally cool. It takes very little of the leucine and B6 to actually make this effect of increasing fat burning. Talk about AMP. If you're around trainers a lot, they're really fond of this enzyme right now. You might hear them call it AMPK, or AMP kinase, or AMPK. It's an enzyme that actually senses the fuel level in your muscle. It's sort of like the fuel gauge of your muscle. Just like in your car is a fuel gauge, this is the AMP is the K is the fuel gauge in your muscles. And what we found out first, actually the people who sort of first discovered it were the exercise physiologists. And they found that when you exercise, really the training effect of exercise is to increase mitochondria. The more you work out, the easier it is to do the task. If you go out and run, if you work out and you do it for 2-3 weeks, it gets easier. It's because you're increasing your mitochondria and your ability to burn fat. What's causing that? AMP causes it. When you increase AMP, you increase your ability to burn fat. And what's really cool is that's exactly what Core does. Core, you know, has the essentials in it, which is made up of 3 different herbs. One of the ones that we talk a lot about, we call the king's herbs for short. The real name is Gymnostemma pentaphyllum. And specifically what the research has now shown is the king's herb has a direct effect on stimulating AMPK. So when you take Core alongside of metabolic, both of them are ramping up AMP kinase to burn more fat. And that's why we get such remarkable effects that you saw the testimonials. It's the integration of these products that nobody else has a clue about. We talk about being 5 years ahead. I would guess this is probably 10 years ahead of anybody else even thinking about this. Okay? Integration of these systems. These are not random systems out there. We're making the health foundation. We're integrating it. They work great alone, but together they're amazing. Let's talk about Prime. Prime's another example. Again, you know it as a nitric oxide activator. It's important for circulation, blood pressure, helps sort of relax the blood vessels and blood flows easier, lower blood pressure. In the last year or so, athletes have got enormously interested in nitrate. For a long time, people took arginine supplements and found out they don't work. And then they took citrulline supplements. They don't work very well. Now the athletes are looking at nitrate. I did a couple of seminars at exercise physiology things, and one I did in Arizona last year. The next 2 speakers after me were talking about beetroot juice and athletes. Okay? What we now know is that when young athletes, 20-year-old athletes, will go out and take beetroot juice or powder or whatever, it increases blood flow. It increases fuel delivery to the muscles, oxygen flow. It increases both endurance and performance. They're beginning to understand this effect of nitrate. And what we have already is we've been selling a product, a proprietary formula of beetroot juice, hawthorn berry, quercetin, pine bark, and a probiotic. We've been selling it for 2 years. They're just beginning to discover it. Okay? We've got a proprietary product that is far ahead of what they're already using, or what they're trying to use. We have a probiotic in it. When you're converting the nitrate into nitrite to use it in the body, it's done in the mouth. That's why we have the stick to actually test it. It's done in the mouth. We actually have the correct probiotic to accelerate that process. Nobody else even thinking about that. So what we now know is that when we use Prime, it helps to deliver the fuels, the oxygen, the amino acids, the fats to the muscle. And so we again get the synergy with metabolic. We're increasing fat burning. We're increasing delivery of those fats to the muscle. We're allowing it to burn them more effectively. So when we put them all together, what we have is these systems. We're protecting our skin. We're protecting our metabolism. We're building the foundation of our metabolism for the future. So as we look into 2015, I'm excited about it. I love the exploration. And I think, as Darcy said, we've got the vehicles, we've got the things to make it work. Let's all go out and make it a great year ahead. Thank you.